Hello, today is January 13th. It's around 10:10 p.m. and it's US Central Standard Time. That's Dallas, Texas time. And I'm recording this backup presentation for the webinar I will be giving tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. Tomorrow is January 14th, 9 o'clock, again, Dallas, Texas time. And that's a webinar I will be giving in India virtually. And that's going to be around 8:30 p.m. India IST, Indian time. And so I usually make these backup presentations just in case there is a technology glitch. And I'm Bhavani Thuresingam from the University of Texas at Dallas. And thank you very much for inviting me to give this webinar. Okay, so I will be here tomorrow morning to give this presentation live. And so I will leave it to the organizers. They could, it depends. I mean, they could play this presentation and then I could answer questions, or I can give this presentation live. So whatever the organizers would like to do. So what I'm going to do is share my screen. Okay, so I hope you can share my screen, and right, the recording is in progress. And so, right, so the title of my talk, Integrating Machine Learning and Cybersecurity with Applications in Internet of Transportation and Healthcare. So in particular, Internet of Transportation is an aspect of Internet of Things, and then that's my current research. But I'm also looking at healthcare, Internet of Things for healthcare, in particular for COVID-19 applications. And again, this is going to be given tomorrow, excuse me, 14 January 2022 at 9 o'clock US Central Standard Time, 9 a.m. in the morning. Okay, so I'm going to talk my part one, many topics, integrating cybersecurity, AI, ML, data science. So in particular, it's machine learning. I also use data science, AI, ML interchangeably for this presentation, and I call it SecAI. So in particular, big data security and privacy, privacy-aware quantified self, cloud-based information sharing. And then I talk about our work on applying data science for cybersecurity applications. And then how do you secure these data science, machine learning, AI techniques, in particular, trustworthy machine learning. So I'll also talk briefly about trustworthy machine learning. That's part one. Part two, I will talk about security and privacy for Internet of Things. And although in general, it's Internet of Things, my focus is going to be Internet of Transportation and infrastructures. And some of the work we have done could be applied also for Internet of Healthcare IoT, financial IoT, in general IoT. Okay, so part three, I'm going to focus on healthcare applications, in particular, some of the work that I'm doing on applying data science, machine learning with respect to COVID-19, as well as privacy and civil liberties. Okay, so my part three is going to be more sort of discussion oriented. Okay, so again, part one, integrating cybersecurity and machine learning. Okay, so what's our motivation? So I first talked about big data security and privacy. So first I'll talk about the motivation and then big data security and privacy. So actually I introduced the idea of data mining. So remember, before we had data science, there was data mining, right? Before that, there was machine learning. Now machine learning is back again, extremely popular. But there was a lot of work being done in the 1990s in data mining. And I was at that time with the MITRE Corporation in Massachusetts, and I did a lot of work in data mining, security, and privacy. So I gave keynote addresses at the IFIP 11.3 Data and Application Security Conference in 1996, and later at the Pacific Asia Knowledge Discovery and Database Conference in 1998, and subsequently published, I call it a landmark paper. I will explain to you why. While I was at NSF, National Science Foundation in 2002 that spawned a new area of research. I call it landmark paper. Reason is that when you are a program director at National Science Foundation, because you are responsible for funding efforts, that means that everyone, right, sort of listens to what you are saying, and so that paper gets many citations. Okay, so at the time, Rakesh Agrawal, he's a researcher. He was a researcher at IBM Almaden, and he coined the term privacy-preserving data mining. How do you do data mining? Because you can mine and extract a lot of information. As a result, you can not only extract information, you can put various pieces of data together and also infer something that is highly sensitive or highly private. So you have the original data source, and then you add some noise, right? And then you add the noise, and then you have a modified data mining process, but the end result should be the same, right? So essentially, you add you tweak it, add some sort of parameter, right, to ensure privacy. But the end result, the data mining result, the fact that, say, most people say in a particular part of Texas, there is more prevalence of, say, brain cancer, that fact should not be, that should be open to everyone. But the fact that individual person has brain cancer, that should not be exposed to people, because that will violate the privacy of the individuals. So that's what they did. And so when I joined the University of Texas at Dallas in 2004, October, my first PhD student, she's Dr. Lee Liu, and with one of my colleagues, Dr. Murad Kantajulu, we co-supervised, and then we looked at not just in general privacy preserving data mining. Her particular focus was also on privacy preserving decision trees and the perturbation method. So I've got various publications. Okay, so data mining security and privacy is exacerbated with big data and data science, machine learning, right? So I hosted an NSF workshop on big data security and privacy in September 2014 and presented the results to the interagency working group in February 2015. Okay, so here is the gist of what we discussed at the workshop. Because there's lots of technological advances and novel applications, it's possible to analyze lots and lots of data, right? For healthcare, for IoT, as well as for data security, for security applications. Remember, if not for, say, machine learning, very likely we may not have had all these vaccines and all these treatments, right? So without a doubt, collecting data is very important. However, when you collect all this data, privacy could be violated. But let's step back a bit. So I also say security tasks, because when you collect all these data, you can use this data to authenticate users, access control, anomaly detection, user monitoring, and protection from insider threat. And so by analyzing and integrating the data collected on the web, what can you do? You can identify connections and relationships among individuals that may in turn help with homeland protection, disease outbreaks, and so on. And the collected data, even if you anonymize it, so you can remove the identifiers, but you can link different records together, and you may be able to re-identify the individuals, right? So security tasks such as authentication and access control may require detailed information about users, example, multi-factor authentication, and so on. This information, if misused or stolen, can lead to privacy breaches. So what are some of the directions? These include securing the data. So we discussed access control models. We also discussed privacy enhanced techniques. And then we talked about applying big data and machine learning for cybersecurity applications. And then what happens if the machine learning techniques are attacked? So we also discussed those aspects at the workshop. And that's what I'm going to discuss in the next few charts. Okay, so what's privacy aware quantified self? Okay, so we are carrying all these mobile devices, right? There's laptops and desktops and smartphones and whatnot, right? All these mobile devices, they become prevalent computing platform with billions of users. And so sociologists and psychologists have talked about quantified self. What they say is to collect lots of information about a person so that you can give advice to the person. So for instance, I do like vanilla ice cream and milk chocolates, right? So let's say if I stack the refrigerator, fortunately, I don't keep anything, any vanilla ice cream and milk chocolates at home. But let's assume that I open the refrigerator and I've stacked up with all this ice cream and chocolates. And if I start eating, that information gathered about me, the refrigerator can send a signal either to my smartphone, actually a voice saying, this is not good for you. You should not be eating this. It'll be great, right? So without a doubt, it's going to help with us collecting all this information, giving advice, because you've got all these apps these days to help you with various aspects, right? Good healthcare practices and living a healthy lifestyle. However, these applications, right, they could collect all this information and my privacy could be violated. What happens if they take that information and send it to my insurance company? Or I'm smoking and they take that information and send it to my insurance company, right? So it could be a disaster, right? So that's the problem, right? So I talk here about, how you can have cloud-based services to carry out all these analytics, but the data collection and sharing are often being carried out with the user's knowledge, bringing grave danger, right? Personal data may be used for improper purposes. For example, data collected by a device monitoring, say, blood glucose levels might be used not only to deny insurance for me, but also to deny insurance for my son, as well as for my grandchildren. So such privacy violations could easily get out of control if data collectors could aggregate, again, financial health related data, tweets, Facebook activity, and purchase patterns. This could result in lawsuits against data collectors and psychological and physical distress. So to address these growing challenges, we urgently need tools and techniques for privacy protection in quantified self applications. So you can see we are wearing all these Fitbits, and here is what is this? This is a glucose monitoring device, right? These are all very useful, but again, privacy could be violated. So what we are saying is, let's take this quantified self, which is very good, what the psychologists are doing and sociologists, and let's put in privacy. So what do I mean by that? So we have got healthcare, fitness, location, social media, all kinds of data coming into our smartphone. This is what we have developed, right? Or some parts have and some parts are not yet. Some of the data, encrypted backup data in the cloud storage, and some of the other data we can anonymize, and there's a cloud-based services to do various analytics. So privacy aware quantified self-manager. This is again, what we are saying is there's data collection, data storage, data analytics, data sharing for this quantified self. But every step of the way, policies have to drive policy aware or policy-based privacy aware quantified data management framework. So whether we are doing data collection, data storage, data analytics, data sharing, policies have to control or influence everything. Okay, so policy aware data collection, storage, access, analytics, learning, and sharing. As more data are collected, the storage on the device will not be sufficient to store all of the data. We envision an encrypted cloud storage component where all the data and all less frequently accessed data can be pushed to the cloud, right? Based on the access control policies, local apps running on the devices will be given access to some of the collected data, and when needed, we can query, right, the encrypted data. So this is what we have developed, right? So data access framework, and this is a mobile system, a smartphone, and you have cloud-based data storage and cloud-based services you can query and get all the information. Okay, so what data do you collect, right? And what data do you push to the cloud? So for instance, when you're 20 years old, it really, unless you've got a serious health problem, it is not really necessary to weigh you every day, right? Because it doesn't matter, even if you put 5 pounds in a day, it's not really, it may not be so taxing to the heart. But if you are, say, 70 years old, it could be more dangerous because you don't want to put on 5 pounds in one night, right? Similarly, 80 years old, it's going to be even worse. So in other cases, the data may have to be deleted to preserve privacy, delete and or generate fake location data to hide the fact that person participated in a protest. So we envision that data sharing and analytics will be carried out using the services running in the cloud, right? So we have mobile apps, data access framework, and so on, and some of the data in the cloud. Again, based on different scenarios, some data could be sent without modifications, heart rate for medical diagnosis. Some will be sent after sanitization, right? So, for example, user responses and so on, and some will be sent in an encrypted format. Okay, so that's the policy-aware data collection, right? That's what we have developed. So just to give you a feel, so this is really what we are talking about. Policies have to govern every step of the way. And here's a little experiment for data sharing. Remember, policy-aware data sharing. So we developed a system where you have, say, agency one, say CDC, agency two, that's the Center for Disease Control, agency two is the National Institutes of Health, and agency three could be Food and Drug Administration. And so all three agencies have to share data because, right, COVID related, especially during COVID time, COVID related data. And so we developed this system where, let's say, three parties or even more, they can put their data and policies into the cloud. Cloud could be anywhere. And then before they share the, before they share the data with the other partners, policies have to be enforced. So if CDC wants some data from NIH, right? CDC can tell NIH, okay, give me the data, but I won't share it with anyone else, something like that. So we implemented the system and we demonstrated. Actually, our implementation was more to do with sort of Department of Defense because the Air Force funded the work, but the system can be applied to CDC, NIH, and FDA as well, to give you a flavor. Okay, so now I move on to the other topics. So we talked about privacy and data sharing. So policies have to govern everything, right? So the other topic is data science for cybersecurity applications. So what's that? Big data stream classification, right? So typically when you say machine learning, you use past data to build the classification model, the machine learning model. And then you predict the labels of future instances using the model. And that will also help with decision making, right? So what we are talking about here is continuous flow of data streams, massive amounts of data and continuous flow of data, right? Continuous flow of data, very common in our digital world, massive amounts. So you have network traffic coming in, right? And so we develop a classification model. And then if it's attack, you quarantine, otherwise benign traffic, you let it go. But you can ask, so what's the big deal, right? This has been around for about 20, 30 years or 25 years when we started with data mining. But the challenge here is that these concepts are changing, right? Yesterday, it would have been by Microsoft stocks, today by Apple, tomorrow it's going to be Google, the next day Facebook, and so on, right? And so there is no one concept, because 20 years ago, we were doing this kind of work, but there was only one model. We did not know at the time how to do sort of real-time changing models. So what we do is that we update the models continuously as the concepts are changing, lots of data coming in. Yesterday's data for some applications may not be valid today, or yesterday's results. So constantly we are building models. And there could be an expert in the process, or these models themselves could talk to each other. And so that's what we developed, and we applied it to a number of applications, including insider threat detection. What's insider threat? Bad people are in the, pretending to be good people, right? And that has been around for years and years and years, even before computers, right? In intelligence organizations, some have carried out espionage, where you've got all the clearances, but you pretend to be good. But you're really bad and you're stealing information and sending it to the adversary. And so we are focusing, since we start computer world, we are focusing on sort of software, right? Malicious software. So insider threat detection requires identification of rare anomalies of context, evolving behavior. So it's really difficult because they are hiding in our system. So we have designed and developed an ensemble-based stream mining. Stream mining means stream analytics or stream-based machine learning. Remember, continuous data arriving. Addresses challenge by maintaining an evolving collection of multiple models to classify dynamic data streams. The result is a classifier that exhibits substantially increased classification accuracy for real insider threat streams relative to traditional supervised learning. So we use support vector machine and one class support vector machine and other single model approaches. So we have designed and developed unsupervised, right? So we did static support vector machine, static models, but we also developed unsupervised ensemble-based learning, and I'll show it in the next chart or next slide. And based on some complex dictionary methods. We have a number of papers in this area. So repetitive sequences found throughout dynamic data streams of unbounded length to identify anomalies. In unsupervised learning, compression-based techniques are used to model common behavior sequences. This results in a classifier exhibiting a substantial increase in classification accuracy for data streams containing insider threat anomalies. This ensemble of classifiers allow the unsupervised approach. So we found the surprising unsupervised approach performed much better, higher accuracy and so on. Okay, so this is our architecture, right? So we have various system calls, right? The complex dictionary for the unsupervised and support vector machine for the supervised. So there are several chunks, right? The data is arriving in chunks. So ith chunk, we call it KI. And then what we do is we extract the usual, extract the features and so on, but we have an ensemble. As every chunk arrives, we build a model, right? And we have a collection of models. Over time, some models and the models are talking to each other, and then they are throwing away the bad models. So over time, the model that was valid last week is not valid anymore. And so that model is thrown away. So we build an ensemble of models, right? And when the I+1 chunk arrives, right, then again, we extract the features and then we test. Okay, so we train and then we test. But the challenge here, right, the research is building this ensemble of models. And we applied, as I said, graph-based anomaly detection, data compression, as well as support vector machine and one class support vector machine. And we got some very good results. So that is, and a number of papers. So this is actually, as I said, insider threat detection, data science machine learning for cybersecurity applications. But now is the main problem. What happens if this machine learning applications or machine learning that we are using, data science machine learning techniques are attacked, right? So we may be applying this not just for cybersecurity, but also for healthcare, for financial applications, for Internet of Things, and so on. But if these machine learning techniques are attacked, you cannot depend, because it can tell you that you have got, say, some mild illness, like let's say some stomach flu or something, when you could really be having colon cancer, or it could say that you are having some kind of a migraine situation when actually it could be brain cancer, right? And then you have lost so much time, and that could cause really that could have a huge impact on your life. So what do we do? So I'll explain to you, right? Adversarial machine learning, and this is the problem. So adversary is modifying the data, trying to figure out what we are doing, and the adversary is trying to modify the data and defeat the learning algorithms. Adversarial understand. So we need to understand the adversary, learn about the adversary. It's not concept drift. It's not online learning. It's not the changing concepts. Adversary adapts, right? It's learning about us. It's adapting. So we've got to be several steps ahead of the adversary. It could happen during training time, data poisoning, during testing time, modifying features when data mining is deployed. So there's a game being played between the data miner and the adversary. So it's a game playing. And so you've got these blue circles that are good instances. The red squares are bad instances. And this is the support vector machine boundary. Okay, see what happens. Adversary is learning what we are doing. Our model and our data, it's trying to push the bad instances below this boundary so they won't be caught. So at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bad instances are not caught, right? So adversary has gained something. Right, so we've got to figure out what the adversary is doing and make sure that we catch these 5 bad instances. So before we do anything, we've got to sort of think about what is the attack model. Remember, adversary can have sort of lots and lots of attacks, but we have to, and all the adversary has to do is have one successful attack. We have to handle everything, and that's going to be a big challenge. So we looked at 2 types of attacks: free range attacks, where adversary can move the malicious data anywhere in the domain, That's what this talks about. And the other is more targeted attack. And our paper, I'll show you our paper. This is one of the early papers on adversarial machine learning. Okay. So, okay, sorry. So again, what I showed earlier, right? So this is our paper. So threat model published in ACM KDD. Threat model, attacker modifies X to X prime, right? It could be test time during deployment time, modify packet length by adding dummy bytes, may add good word to spam email, add noise to an image. So you can see the green circles are good instances, the red squares are bad, crosses are bad instances. This is the original support vector machine, boundary line. So remember, adversary is trying to push a lot of crosses right beyond this boundary line so that they won't be caught. So we've got to figure out what the adversary is doing, and we want to move this boundary line. Lots of mathematics and game theory involved. And so we try to move this, and that's the blue line. So the black dashed line is a standard support vector machine, and the blue line is the adversarial support vector machine. And so here it explains further, right? You have the red squares and the green crosses and the green circles, and all these black crosses, right? They are the bad ones. And if earlier, none of them would have been caught, but now that we have moved the blue line, everything below is going to come as bad instances. But there's a problem, right? You can say, okay, so why not I move this blue line right here? So it would have caught all these black crosses. The problem is, as we move the blue line, some of the green circles, which are good instances, are showing up as bad instances. So we are getting some false positives. We don't want false positives. We don't want false negatives either. Both are bad. And so what we are trying to do is to move it to a point, right? So the whole challenge is to find the correct point, okay, the correct place to put this blue line, or move this blue line to. So that's the whole research. Okay, so we have our paper in ACM KDD. This is sort of a side thing. What we looked at is, what we are, and something of interest again, the adversary is continuously modifying its behavior so that sort of the antivirus products are not catching it, right? So that's what the adversary is trying to do. So adversary is also employing machine learning. And we did some very interesting work, how the adversary is changing patterns. So this is our antivirus databases, right? We can use semantic, whatever product, and it's our antivirus signature. All the signatures are here. And so signature query interface, right? So what we are doing, the adversary, right? The malware is querying, it knows exactly what we have, our antivirus products. And so it's taking some signature, it's approximating, it's obfuscating, doing some various techniques, and it's testing, is it going to get caught, right? Is the antivirus product going to get caught, right? So take the malware, obfuscate, and then you have obfuscated binary. And if it finds after testing, it's not getting caught, propagate it. So machine learning techniques are being used by the adversary. So we, as I said, we need to be several steps ahead. And this is what we are trying to do, is to move the support vector machine boundary here. So this work was done even before that, before we started the adversarial machine learning. Okay. So another thing that everybody is talking about is this whole area of trustworthy machine learning. How do you trust the machine learning? What do you mean by trustworthy machine learning, right? Machine learning that can handle privacy, machine learning that can handle fairness, it is not biased, it's also handling security, attacks, everything put together. It's really a kind of a nightmare situation to develop such machine learning, but that's what the current very active research. So one thing is, computations over big data may require massive computational resources. We can use third-party service to outsource some of the computations. When a third-party service is used for computation, data inherently becomes available in untrusted environments that is either observed by man in the middle during data transmission or inside a threat from adversaries at the third-party location where computation is performed. So we are conducting research in secure encrypted stream data processing and trustworthy analytics, right? So what we are saying is, instead of doing in software, why don't we use the Intel's SGX platform and use that to execute? So do some of the security critical execution, use hardware, right? That's one thing. So that's one solution. And then we are saying, what about applying formal methods, verifying that the machine learning algorithms, machine learning techniques are doing what they're supposed to do, right? Formal methods for machine learning, including logics for specification, for deep learning, and verification of the machine learning algorithms. So this is some of our current research. And to mention about the SGX, as you can see, I won't go into the details. So it has got all of the application memory, SGX runtime, encrypted code, and then you have this data analytics, right? It's being carried out, the machine learning, in special execution, trustworthy regions. So within trustworthy regions, we are executing some of the security critical code software. So that's one solution. Formal methods is another solution, right, to secure the machine learning techniques. The third solution is adversarial machine learning, applying game theory to figure out where to move the support vector machine, the line, the separation boundary. Okay, so that finishes part 2. So I've talked about a lot of topics, right? Big data security, privacy, privacy aware, quantified self, data science for machine learning for cybersecurity, and what happens if the security techniques, machine learning techniques are attacked. Okay, so now I go to part 2, which is security and privacy for Internet of Things. In particular, I'll talk about our application, which is Internet of Transportation. Okay, so Internet of Things, as you can see, are coffee, and take a sip of my tea. When I saw this cup here, I got reminded I still have some unfinished tea. Okay, so our coffee or tea connected to our smartphones, our televisions, and emails, and clocks, and Amazon carts, and whatnot, right? Our cell phones, our smartphones, that's IoT. It can also be applied to healthcare. That's the special focus of this conference. It can also be applied to transportation, right? The cars talking to each other, cars are talking to the trains and to the trucks and to the roadworks, everything is connected. Okay, so Internet of Transportation, it's the Internet of Things has major implications in transportation. Autonomous vehicles, AVs, aim at improving day-to-day activities, such as delivering packages, improving traffic, and the transportation of goods. In the US, trucks alone carry an estimated 63.3% of freight of goods. AVs are not limited to ground vehicles, but they can also be aerial, right? Ground is cars, trucks, lorries, and so on. Aerial vehicles, airplanes and drones, and sea vehicles like ships and boats and submarines. Levels of automation for AVs range from 0 to 5, with current ground vehicles in the market having partial automation at level 2, and aerial vehicles having high level automation of level 4. Companies are invested heavily in AVs. GM spent about $728 million in R&D in 2018 to $1 billion in 2019 and more 2020. I haven't gotten the latest numbers. So lots of potential for autonomous vehicles, right? Eventually we are going to have driverless vehicles, right? Very likely, right? It's already there, but we don't see it every day. So, and the improvements it can do to the transportation industry. But the big problem, security and privacy. They pose huge challenges that need to be addressed as we move forward. Okay, so security of autonomous vehicles. AVs evaluate their environment using a variety of sensors, camera, GPS, inertial measurement units, LiDAR, radar, and so on. Previous research has shown sensors are susceptible to malicious tampering, IMUs are susceptible to sound waves, GPS receptors are susceptible to spoofing signals. Vehicles should verify the veracity of signals before acting, right? So this transportation, IoT systems, these are sensor-based. So sensor-based, so AVs rely on sensors to evaluate and interact with the environment, fine. Inherited issues, right? So sensors are susceptible to GPS spoofing and transduction attacks that manipulate environmental physical signals, visual, sound, magnetic, and needed defenses. So classification, computing, classical computing security, memory protection, cryptography may not sort of work as much as well, right? So we need special techniques. Due to the, and then real-time nature, right? We may not be able to verify due to the real-time constraints. AVs act upon sensor data without any form of verification. So we need to be able to very quickly look at these anomalies and make sure that they function correctly, right? So that's a challenge. So what did we do? We did apply machine learning, by the way, here. We developed a very simple, but I'll tell you what the challenge is. Physics-based anomaly detector. So we built a reference monitor. Reference monitor is that part of the system, software, hardware, firmware, that is security critical. It's carrying out security critical functions. So we use physics-based, and I'll show you in the next chart. We're looking at all the, see, the controls, Internet of Transportation, right? Sensor-based, it's a control system environment. So it's based on physical properties, not our traditional computers, right? They are not really based on physical physics. But this is really, that's more based on mathematics, bits, zeros and ones. This is physics-based for ground and aerial vehicles. We didn't do for sea vehicles. The algorithm has 3 parts. We build a model offline of the AVs, physical invariance. We implement an online tool to monitor expected and observed behavior to detect anomalies, raise an alarm if significant residual difference exists between executions, right? So we have offline pre-processing, right? Do a lot of processing, online verification, and then we detect anomalies. The paper was published in Usenet Security in 2020. Okay, so you can say, what's the big deal, right? This is what we've been doing anyway, right? You know, it's been done for a long time. So what's the new thing? The challenge for us is the physics-based models. And we computer scientists really, like myself, I mean, I did a lot of mathematics right from my undergraduate, and physics, but you know, my grad work and PhD and everything is a lot more computer science, theory of computation, and more computer science my entire career. And so building this physics, so my colleague, Dr. Alvaro Cardenas, he's a control systems expert. And so we built this physics-based model. So offline pre-processing, the AV, autonomous vehicles invariants, are calculated using well-known nonlinear models for aerial and ground vehicles. Accelerometer, gyroscope, and magnetometer sensor data on the X, Y, and Z axis or Z axis is used for the aerial vehicle. Vehicle positioning and steering angle is used for the ground vehicle. So we have, this is the model, right? K is a state, YK input sensor measurements, YK pronounced Y tilde, actually, tilde, pre-processed sensor reading, X command rotators, and you have X pronounced X hat, predicted issues. So LX, LY, LZ, or LZ, moments of inertia needed for nonlinear equations. M is mass, D is drag vector, and B is thrust vector. So we build the model. Once we build the model, we go into online, go to the online stage. We didn't apply any fancy machine learning. We just used extended Kalman filter, which has been used by control engineers for a long, long time. Is used to predict AVs, physical behavior, by estimating unknown parameters from noisy sensor input. The algorithm is divided into 2 sections that predicts and corrects the estimation before it is compared against the sensor data. Okay, so that's the online stage. Anomaly, we use an algorithm called CUSUM, C-U-S-U-M, it's a statistical algorithm, is used to detect the persistent attacks. An alarm is raised if the residual difference, right, whatever is the difference residue, is larger than the predefined threshold. So it's very, very sort of traditional methods, Kalman filters, but the challenge for us is modeling the physics-based properties, okay, Internet of Transportation. Fine, so then our physical implementation, remember we did for drones and then cars. So aerial IV Intel ready to fly drone controller, PX4 flight controller focused on detecting GPS spoofing. Gyroscope attacks are detected after 0.2 seconds, while gyroscope attacks are detected, spoofing and gyroscope attacks, GPS are detected after 0.2 and gyroscope detected after 1.5 seconds. Overhead is about 5.4%. For the ground systems, we had built on top of Traxxas Ford Fiesta, ST Rally Chache controller, ROX kinetic cam focus on detecting visual attacks on the camera, attacks detected after 0.1 seconds, overhead introduced 2.25%. Each threshold produces a probability of false alarms of approximately 2%. Okay, so that's the the security part, right? Applying, again, Kalman filters, extended Kalman filters. For privacy, this is what we are thinking for privacy. So we haven't, much of a focus has been on security. But with respect to privacy, remember the earlier picture I showed us, smartphone, we are getting all this information, healthcare, social media, and so on for quantified self. Similarly, we have a car and there's some gadget in the car. We have radar, GPS, cameras, LIDAR, ultrasonic, and then we are collecting data collection, data storage, data analytics, data sharing, and then encrypted backup data, anonymized data in the cloud-based services. So we have privacy over anonymized vehicles. Why is privacy important, right? Because sometimes I may not want people to find out where I am, or I'm smoking, say, in my car, and I don't want people to take photographs and send it to my insurance companies. But some people say it's very hard to, provide privacy because once you're outside your home and everything is visible. But nevertheless, and I don't want my driving patterns, to be known by others and they inform my insurance company. So nevertheless, what I'm saying is let's look at our data collection, data storage, data analytics, data sharing, what we said earlier for healthcare systems, and then look at policy-based data collection, data storage, data analytics, data sharing. Okay, so that's the direction we want to take. And of course, the last chart for part 2 is, again, how can we apply what we did in part 1? So here is something I said, what we applied for healthcare, we can apply for Internet of Transportation systems, right? And so what I'm saying here is, how can we apply AI and security for IoT, right? So we said developments in integrating cybersecurity, AI exploding. Every application we need data science is being, and AI is being applied, machine learning. So our work apply AI for security, insider threat detection, and security for AI, adversarial machine learning. We've also developed privacy-aware healthcare, right? So you can think of our privacy-aware healthcare as a sort of an IoT system, right? Because there's a lot of data coming in from social media, from our internet, from our cell phones, and so on. We are collecting and analyzing the data, right, for healthcare purposes, right? So privacy-aware quantified self. At the same time, with the development of Internet of Things, transportation system infrastructure, security and privacy solutions are being developed. As driverless cars become a reality, more and more of the AVs will use AI ML techniques, right? So the challenge, how can we develop AI solutions detected from malware, right? How can we apply whatever we did in part 1, right? Data science, machine learning for cybersecurity, and adversarial machine learning for autonomous vehicles, right? So that's a challenge, future direction. And then what I mentioned earlier, right? Can we apply the privacy-aware policy-based framework we develop for healthcare applications, or quantified self, improving our healthy lifestyle for Internet of Transportation and infrastructures? Is it possible to perform trustworthy analytics? How can we bring in formal methods for IoT? So I'm saying there are numerous opportunities for substantial research and development, right? So that's part 2. Now we come to part 3. In particular, healthcare applications, right? So data science, machine learning, how can we bring it into COVID-19? What about privacy? What about our civil liberties? Lot of discussions today. So I thought I would address that aspect of it. Okay. So the question is, how can we apply the lessons learned in data science, ML, and IoT security and privacy to healthcare and COVID-19? Privacy-aware policy-based data collection, right? Testing and tracing, data storage and management, data analytics, data sharing. So that's really important, right? There's so much of testing and tracing, but we need to have a good, better handle to figure out who are the vulnerable people. So approaches to anonymizing the data. Data science, AI-enabled techniques for detecting the spread of SARS-CoV-2. That's, COVID-19, that's a virus. How does SARS-CoV-2 mutate? How is it mutating? What is the signature? How can data science AI techniques be applied to detect its mutations, right? We are talking about Omicron and Deltacron, right? How can we use AI to figure out how is it going to mutate, right? From SARS-CoV-2, the original, right? Alpha to beta to I think there was Gamma to Delta, and now Omicron and Deltacron. What else we don't know. How can data science help with vaccine development, right? So we gather all of this data and then look at all the pharmacological information, put it all together and develop the vaccine. So pharmaceutical companies. How can data science and AI techniques be protected? Adversarial, what happens? We are applying AI for vaccine development as well as for COVID-19 applications, right? Detecting which vulnerable populations. If the AI techniques are attacked, it will be disaster, right? So pharmaceutical companies will say mix chemical A and B instead, should be, but it's the machine learning technique that is attacked is saying mix chemical A and D, and that could cause devastating consequences, right? What's the impact of social media? How do we detect fake news? And what about our cloud-based information sharing? So IoT for healthcare, multiple devices, medical devices, mobile phones collecting data and communicating with each other. And how can we apply the Internet of Transportation, right? Some of those techniques for healthcare. That's the challenge. Okay, so I'm just doing my work in this healthcare area is more about, looking at the privacy, what are the civil liberties unions, so more sort of social sciences perspective. But there's a lot of work that needs to be done from a computer science perspective. Okay, so data science, machine learning for COVID-19 prediction. Data is at the heart of epidemiology, right? And the study of infectious diseases. Data is used not only to detect and prevent spread of infectious diseases, but also to find treatments, vaccines, and so on. Data is being collected on those infected with COVID-19, including information about their personal travel details, their contacts, associations, and so much of information is being collected. As a result, privacy could be violated. What we are also hoping is that data science can be used to determine those who are asymptomatic. That's the challenge, right? And could be potential spreaders of the virus. For example, if those who are asymptomatic are tested positive for the virus, then one can study the behavior patterns and the genetic markup of these people, right? Data science can also be used in developing treatments and vaccines. Data science means I'm saying machine learning, AI, data science. Treatments and vaccines, information about the DNA of the virus, the genetic makeup of the individuals susceptible to the virus and all the information. So why is it that some people are falling really sick and some people don't have even symptoms and some people have just mild symptoms? So we know about comorbidities, but what is more, we need some more detailed information. Data collection, data storage between different agencies and countries, applying data science techniques are activities that are critical, developing solutions to handle the pandemic. These solutions could be medical solutions, behavior, social solutions, wearing a mask, covering the nose and mouth, eye goggles, face shield, gloves, hair coverings, and other protective equipment. Okay, so there's a lot of work to be done here, applying machine learning. But I'm sort of, as I said, interested in the privacy because I'll tell you why. Back in 2001, fall, after 9/11, I was with the MITRE Corporation and I joined the government for 3 years. And we did a lot of interagency work in seeing whether we can apply, data science for counterterrorism. But there were a lot of concerns about privacy, right? The American Civil Liberties Union said, you can't just go and pick people randomly and start investigating them, okay? So I'm going to talk about the differences between the two. So a major issue with collecting and analyzing COVID-19, contact tracing possibility using his or her cell phone, right? It is crucial that we inform the person's contacts, because we want to, inform people that there is someone who has got COVID. Okay, but we also have to make sure the person's privacy is maintained. That's the dilemma we are faced with. The privacy dilemma poses a huge challenge to those working in healthcare analytics. Denying access to the data means potentially millions of deaths. Having access to the data means could violate the privacy of individuals. That could result in serious consequences to the person, such as being denied health coverage for a pre-existing condition, or using the data to determine the behavioral patterns of the person, subsequently blackmailing him or her. In order to treat the person, the healthcare providers may need access to his or her genetic profiles. From this information, they learn about potential diseases the person could get, but the insurance companies may deny coverage. That's a challenge. Therefore, what should we do? that we provide the best care to the COVID-19 patients, but at the same time ensure their privacy. The solution may lie in the privacy aware. Remember, I talked about privacy aware, policy-based data collection, storage, management, sharing. Policies have to guide the data collection, the data sharing, the data analytics, and so on. So that's really crucial. And again, when we say we are deleting the data, is the data really deleted, right? How do we know? It's not like a jewelry we put in the store in the bank, we remove the jewelry, there's no sign of the jewelry. But deleting the data, we don't know, right? With say the cloud service provider has deleted the data. So we need to do some auditing. So what about civil liberties? That's the problem, because data collection is really important. So during 9/11 time, right, we talked about collecting data about various individuals to study about their patterns, to determine whether they are potential terrorists. But the American Civil Liberties Union was very, very concerned about just collecting data about people. You're not supposed to do that, right? So, but for COVID-19, I'm seeing, again, nobody else has mentioned, but I'm looking at some of the writings about from American Civil Liberties Union, ACLU, and they are more supportive of policy. They are also saying, so I looked at it after we did our work. So even ACLU is saying that we need policy-based data collection and analytics, right? So this is what they are saying, right? Technology principles embed privacy by design, important type of protection, voluntariness, whenever possible, person testing positive must consent. You have to get the consent of the person. Use limitations, data should not be used forever and ever and ever, right? Only for public health purposes. Minimization, policies must be in place to ensure only necessary information is collected. Data destruction, if you want to destroy the data, you've got to make sure that the data is indeed destroyed. Transparency, if the government obtains any data, it must be fully transparent, okay, about what data it's acquiring. No mission creep, policies must be in place to ensure tracking does not outlive the efforts against COVID-19, right? These policies at a minimum must be in place. So what I'm saying is, and then there are also COVID-19 public health privacy, Apple, Google, they announced coronavirus tracking systems. So there's much more. What I'm saying is amenability for collecting data according to policies, but it was not the same for 9/11 because people were very concerned data was being collected and branding a person as a terrorist. But again, we have learned so much from 9/11, right? We never talked about policy-based data sharing then. But now we have learned a lot, and so we can apply this whether we are talking about counterterrorism or healthcare or internet of transportation. That's the main point. Okay, so that's what I'm saying, 2002 versus 2020, right? 2020, the COVID time, 2002, soon after 9/11. While privacy advocates are still concerned about privacy violations, they also understand the need for data collection sharing, right? However, when we compare the ACLU's position with their position back in 2002, just after 9/11, right, it has changed. I believe it has changed. I think also it's partly due to the fact, as I said, we know much about policy-aware data collection, sharing, and so on. Whereas back then they said, we don't want to just keep collecting, and it could be a false sense of security. So now we know a lot more. Furthermore, at this time, certain individuals were detained by government, even when they had no connection to terrorism, right? So that was concerning. However, the pandemic is quite different. Even if a person seems perfectly healthy, it may be necessary to test the person as she may be asymptomatic. Therefore, there seems to be more tolerance towards testing and contact tracing today than it was back in 2002. Apart from privacy advocates, there are also people who refuse to wear masks and stop going to bars as they claim their civil liberties are being violated. That's a big challenge, right? I don't know how we can deal with it. Although back in 2002, general public, that's an interesting thing, right? Because remember, back in 2002, I noticed that it's more of the liberal people who were complaining that the government was collecting data about them and, right, and their civil liberties are being violated. Whereas today, wearing masks and so on, it's the more conservative people who are concerned that their civil liberties are being violated. Whereas the liberal people, more liberal people are they say, oh, data needs to be collected, policy aware, of course, because we need solutions for COVID-19. They are more amenable to wearing masks. That's what we are observing. So it's very different. When we talked about counterterrorism, the more conservative people were, I believe, more concerned about, they really wanted to get information about people to see whether there are terrorists or not. But when it comes to healthcare, it's the liberal people who want to sort of collect information, when I say healthcare, for COVID-19, right? So that they want to make sure that we have solutions for COVID-19. Right. So with respect to COVID-19, we see what happens in hospitals, and for some reason, people do not seem as concerned about it because they think that this would not happen to them. I believe that constant education is also important, regardless of whether we are discussing national security or the COVID-19 pandemic. It's all about balancing safety and security. We want to be safe and we want to be secure with privacy and civil liberties. And what's the solution? The solution, at least so far, seems to be policy aware data collection, sharing, and so on, right? So only a few more charts. How can we apply SARS-CoV research to cybersecurity, right? We talked about how we can apply some of the things that we have done in the past to COVID-19 work. But with the other way about, how do computer viruses mutate? So by studying how COVID-19 is mutating, we might maybe get some idea how these viruses are mutating. How can we obtain the DNA equivalent of computer viruses? Is there an analogy between the spread of biological viruses and computer viruses? How can we carry out data curation for computer viruses, right? So, for example, NIST NVD, has got all the data about the various viruses. So how can we do data? It's a database that NIST has got, and NIST has developed with all the attacks. So how can we do data curation? What type of vaccines can we develop to protect against computer viruses? Is there an analogy being asymptomatic for COVID-19 and a computer virus? I have absolutely no idea. I'm just throwing a lot of questions. How can we make machine learning network web asymptomatic, even if they are infected and not cause any damage? What type of deep learning models work effectively for detecting computer viruses? Right? So deep learning are these machine learning models. How can statistical methods and virtual reality be applied to have various demonstrations to look at how the viruses are spreading? What are the prevention methods? We have to, carry out proper cyber hygiene, just like we are wearing masks, wash our hands, sanitizers, and so on. We have to practice proper cyber hygiene. How can we apply the testing and clinical trials of the vaccines to testing solutions to handle cyber attacks? Okay, so summary and directions. Data science, ML being explored for counterterrorism. Privacy implications have also been examined. Capability for collecting, storing, analyzing, and sharing massive amounts of data resulted in various aspects of big data security and privacy. Solutions being explored include privacy aware, policy-based data management, framework for data collection, storage, management, analytics, and sharing. Data science, machine learning have been explored for cybersecurity problems, as I said, malware analysis, insider threat detection. However, the data science techniques, machine learning could also be attacked. So I talked about adversarial machine learning. There's an analogy between applying data science for counterterrorism and cybersecurity applications and science. I'll correct it, by the way, to handle, all the spelling errors here, COVID-19 pandemic, and I'll correct it before I send it, okay, before I talk tomorrow, including testing and contact tracing. However, collecting and analyzing to handle the pandemic would result in violations of individual privacy and civil liberties. The challenge is to develop solutions to handle the COVID-19 pandemic and at the same time ensuring the privacy of the individuals. Okay, the scientific and medical community, they are conducting research on uncovering DNA of this SARS-CoV-2, which became alpha, beta, gamma, delta, and then Omicron, and the way it mutates. The question is, can we learn from this biological research to develop solutions to detect and prevent the machines and networks being infected with computer viruses? Both the scientific medical research community and cyber research security community we can learn from each other. Okay, so that's the end of the presentation. I would like to thank my colleagues, Professor Alvaro Cardenas for the work on Internet of Transportation and Security, Murad Kantajulu for adversarial machine learning, Professor Latifa Khan for data science, machine learning for cybersecurity applications, our PhD student, Dr. Cardenas, and my student, Dr. Alvaro Quinones, for his work on Internet of Transportation, Ms. Rhonda Walls, who is our project coordinator, who sort of does so much work to support our successful research. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is stop sharing. Okay, so this is the end of my presentation. As I said, I'm going to send the Zoom link, right, as well as the, I'm going to make some corrections, sorry about this, make some corrections to the last bit I was talking about, to the last chart. I had some spelling errors, I will fix them. And then I'm going to send the presentation as well as the Zoom link to the conference organizers. So it has taken exactly around 1 hour. And so they've allocated, I think, 1 hour and 30 minutes. So again, I'll be there in the morning. They want to play this presentation. That's great. And I will still be there. And then I'll be there to answer your questions. Okay. And I hope this talk was beneficial. Again, cybersecurity for data science for cybersecurity, or cybersecurity, I mean, machine learning, data science for cybersecurity, cybersecurity for machine learning, meaning adversarial machine learning, Internet of Transportation, and then I moved into sort of Internet of health, Internet of Things for healthcare, and in particular, I talked about the COVID-19 and how can we apply what we have learned from COVID-19 to cybersecurity, cybersecurity to COVID-19 research. Okay, and again, thank you very much for inviting me to give this webinar, and hopefully, I'll be seeing, well, definitely I'll be seeing you all, unless of course there's a technology glitch, in which case they will, do this presentation while staying at home. This last staying at home means working mostly from home, although we have got online classes, but with Omicron, things have gotten delayed. So it's almost 2 years now, right? 2 years on March 13th that we've been working mostly from home. And I've given numerous presentations, and only once, I've given probably about 100 presentations, I would say, maybe a little bit of exaggeration. Well, including classes, maybe it's over 100, but only once during my class and once during a keynote address I gave, but fortunately I'd finished my address, and that was when I had an internet glitch. So from day one, I've always made backup presentations or placeholder. A better word is placeholder presentation, just in case there's an internet glitch. Again, thank you very much. And I will see you in the morning, Dallas time, January 14th at 9 a.m. in the morning, and India time at 8:30 p.m. on January 14th. Thank you very much. Bye. And I'm going to now stop the recording.